Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Let's Have a Conversation, a podcast that discusses various topics related to the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act and the educational stability for youth in foster care. We aim to increase awareness and promote education on these matters. My name is Elizabeth Fortner, and I am the ECYA Outreach and Marketing Specialist here in Region 3. I want us to give a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Dr. Evelyn Anderson. Dr. Anderson is originally from Philadelphia and currently works in higher education, providing support to college students pursuing post-secondary degrees. Before obtaining her terminal degree in education, planning, and administration, Dr. Anderson earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and 2 master's degrees, one in criminal justice and another in higher education counseling. Despite facing challenges on her path to success, Dr. Anderson has achieved many accomplishments in various areas of her life. Her focus now is on advocating for stronger support systems to help college students transitioning out of foster care find success in post-secondary settings. Through her scholarship and work in higher education, Dr. Anderson aims to bring awareness to their experiences. So thank you, Evelyn, for joining us today. I'm
Thank you for
very
such a
happy.
warm welcome, Liz. I really
Yes.
appreciate you having me.
Oh, of course, of course. So let's have a conversation about your journey to success. I understand it was not an easy road. So would you be willing to share some details about how you reached your current position?
Of course, of course. So I'm going to start off with my lived experience. I think that is such a huge part of my story as to how I arrived where I am now. And I think if it hadn't been for those experiences, I wouldn't have gotten here. And so my journey starts when I am 7 years old and I live with my father. And I will admit that we did not have the best living situation. In my mind, no one did around in our neighborhood. It was almost like the norm. But it was decided by children and youth that we were not able, me and my siblings, there was 3 of us, that we were not able to safely live with my father. And so we were all removed from my dad's care. And that's when my whole life changed. And even though I don't remember the specifics of that day, I remember how I felt. And this is me as a 7-year-old little girl, confused, scared, and unsure of the future. And so the next 10 years would be me spending time in different shelters, group homes, foster homes, residential facilities, trying to figure out where I belonged and also feeling like I didn't belong. And so I suffered a lot through that. I suffered through depression, feeling like, why me? Asking God, like, why is this happening to me? Why can't I go home? Why can't I be with my dad? And as poor as we were, I wanted to be with my dad. And so it wasn't until my last placement that I said to myself, and I had a lot of conversations with myself, and I said, Evelyn, you have to stop pitying yourself. You have to do something about this. And the way I see it, you can't change your past, but you can do something to make your future better. And so one thing that I always made sure to do was do well in school. In high school, there were things that because of the trauma that I had experienced, I didn't have the best attitude. I will always admit that because I was so angry, but I always kept up with school. And one day I said, you know what? You're going to college. I didn't know how I was going to do it or who was going to help me. And it wasn't until one of my social workers, I think I will always give her the utmost praise. She called me into her office and she said, Evelyn, you have to fill out your FAFSA. And I said, my what? I don't even know what that is. And so she explained to me that it was for me to get financial aid to attend college. And so I did that. And then again, I'm still Evelyn. I am still angry. I still want to go home. And so I always tell this story because there's always something that comes out of something else. So I did all my applications. I applied to several schools. And then I decided I was going to run away. I was going to go home because I wanted to go home. So I went home to my siblings' house in Philly, in West Philly. And then I noticed that no one was doing anything. So I would wake up and there would be no movement. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so where I came from, the placement I came from, they told you when you would eat, what you could do. Everything was scheduled. So me getting up and just sitting there, I was like, oh, this is not for me. Let me go run back to where I ran away from. So I told my brother, please take me back to the bus station. I'm not really sure what's going on here. But it gave me a glimpse of what my life would be if I decided to stay and not pursue something better for myself. So I got myself back on that bus. And then I had to see my social worker that Monday. And crazy enough, she brought an envelope with my acceptance letter to Westchester University. And she said, Evelyn, if you had not come back today, we would have discharged you. And I don't know if that was God saying, this is for you. Like, I think I needed to see what I thought I was missing so that I can move forward in this journey that I am now, because I was mortified and I wanted to go back to placement. And so imagine what that was like for me. And so there it began. I started off at Westchester and actually completed all of my education at Westchester, but still, I felt like a really small fish in an overloaded pond. I was so alone. I didn't disclose to people that I had been in foster care and all these different systems because I didn't want people to look at me differently. I didn't want people to pity me. I wanted to be treated like everyone else. And so I get through my bachelor's. Crazy enough, I had a son in my sophomore year. And again, I'm like, I should drop out. I have this big responsibility now. And something kept saying to me, Evelyn, don't stop. So me and my young son, we did it. It was hard. It was hard. I don't promote that, but it was so hard. But having him and knowing what I had been through in my life just motivated me even more to provide him with the life that I could only wish for. And I knew that the only way that I would achieve that is by educating myself and creating the life that I wanted. And so I kept going. So I went through my first graduate degree in criminal justice. I worked in mental health for many years, and in the field in Philadelphia with truancy and mental health and helping parents, regain control and, gain peace in their household and make sure that their children were abiding by the law by going to school. And then as the years went by, I noticed that it was taking a toll on my mental health. And so one thing that I always make sure to do is not to dismiss my experiences and my feelings, because I can't help other people if I am not taking care of myself. And so I was becoming unhappy with the work that I was doing, not because it wasn't important, but because I felt like it was taking a mental toll on me. And so I sat down with my then boyfriend and I said, I think I need to go back to school to do something different. And that's how I ended up doing the second master's in higher ed counseling and student affairs. I love that program so much because it taught me a lot about myself, something that I actually was not expecting. I had just expected to go in, learn what the curriculum, and just be done. But it shed so much light on myself, the things that I had gone through and experiences that I have had in higher education, navigating it primarily on my own, seeing that the students in my class were way younger than me. At this point, I'm in my late 20s. They're all 22, 23. And here I am, a mother getting her second graduate degree. And so that program really allowed me to look into myself and figure out my why. From there, I started to work in dual enrollment. And for those of you who do not know what dual enrollment is, when students in high school are able to get a start on their education by taking classes in college while they are still in high school. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And then I saw a position come open at my alma mater, which would have been just amazing to me. And so I nailed the interview, got the job. And then I worked in advising for 3 years. I loved advising because it wasn't just telling students what classes they needed. It was really digging into their fears, their successes, things that didn't have anything to do with school and was presenting as the barrier to them. And so it allowed me not only to help them in a significant way, but also help me to use my counseling skills in a non-traditional way where there's not like a therapist and the person sitting on the other end. So when I met with students, it was always, you're the driver and I'm in the passenger seat. Tell me where we're going. And so allowing students to feel like they had control over their lives was always something that was important to me. So fast forward, I decide that I need to do something different because I want to always make sure that I'm not stagnant. So I enroll in the doctoral program at the university, same program, and then my dad gets sick. And so again, I'm not able to focus on what I'm doing on this very hard thing if the person that I love is not well. So I decided to take a step back, and then I rejoined the cohort 5. Shout out to y'all. They were also just a great support. And when I was going through topics that I could consider for my dissertation, I went through a lot, like internally, because I check off so many boxes. I'm a Black woman, but I'm also 50% Cuban. And I actually went to see them for the first time for my graduation
Wow.
trip. So I met 4 of my siblings. But if you look at me, Liz, you can't tell that I'm
Not at
Cuban.
all.
I had my maiden name, you could tell, because that is a very Hispanic name. And so that was also a part of my childhood. Oh, you're Cuban. And then I stopped saying something because you're just going to have to take it. So there was a lot of different topics, going to school as a Black woman in a PWI. So many, being a parent in college, there were so many topics that I could have gone with. But I sat with this foster care idea because I felt like when I was in college, it was something that was so stigmatized. And maybe it wasn't in a way, maybe it was in my own head, but I didn't go around telling people I was in foster care. And it made me think of all the other students that come into college feeling the same exact way. And because they feel that way, they're not able to get the support that they need. And in turn, because they don't have that support, they end up dropping out because they want to hide this piece of them that in their mind makes them feel or makes them believe that they are weak in some way, that they're different than the other students that are coming in. And so I sat with this because I knew that it would require that I share my story. And it was something that I never did before, because even in my big age, I didn't want people to know what I had gone through because I didn't want people to underestimate me based on my experiences. And so then I decided it was time. And that's how I came up with my dissertation topic.
Wow.
It
Evelyn,
was a
just
lot.
wow. No, listen, you are just incredible because
Mhm.
I didn't know half of that.
Yeah.
The journey that brought you to today and 2 masters, that's something to be proud of as well.
Thank you so much.
Your decision to pursue this profession, obviously it stems from so many factors apart from your personal experience. So, like, what else along the way said that really influenced it?
So when I became successful in education, I noticed that my life changed. I noticed that I was able to do things that I wasn't able to do before. More income. I was able to buy a house. I had a car. And so these things might seem minimal to some people, like, oh, you have a car. But I know some people who I have been in care with who haven't, made out the best, or their living situation is not the best. And I think college has afforded me the opportunity to find the happiness that I had always deserved, but never was able to obtain. And so I needed to do that on my own. And I know for sure if I had not gone to college, I would not be where I am today. If it wasn't for my last placement, covering the cost of my college, I would not be where I am today. And so going back to the dissertation, it was important for me to shed light to people within higher education who did not necessarily know the ins and out of how child welfare worked, the transition from foster care to college and the things that students experience but do not talk about, and the ways in which education has afforded me the life that I live now, and how even though they've dealt with so much trauma and so many changes, that they have the opportunity by attending college to change the trajectory of their lives. So this discussion becomes more important because now, as a college or university, we not only have it's really a privilege to have these students and to know that they've gone through so much and still are like, let's do this, but to also know that it is our duty to make sure that they have the resources, the textbooks, the housing, the food, so that they can feel comfortable enough and have the resources that they need to be successful without feeling shame. And so when we talk about the results of my dissertation, we'll go more into that. But there were a lot of themes that I have found and things that I was able to relate to based on the feedback that I received from my participants, which confirmed that it wasn't only me that was going through this. It's like hundreds, if not thousands of students transitioning into foster care, wanting a better life, but not being able to obtain it. Right now, as it stands, students who transition into college who have experience in foster care only have a 3% graduation rate. And so that is undergraduate. For 2-year degrees or community college, the rate there is about 10%. So yes, students in foster care are graduating community college and 2-year college at a higher rate than they are a 4-year degree. And to me, it's problematic.
For sure, that's very low. And like you said, when you were sharing your upbringing and how you left your last placement and you ran away, you don't know until you know. Just like the professionals in higher ed or staff who are working with high school students who may be in foster care and transitioning into post-secondary, they don't know. And that's the purpose of increasing the awareness, promoting education with our program for the education for children and youth experiencing homelessness. That's the purpose of training our school personnel and sharing conversations about students who are experiencing homelessness and students who are in foster care, but not just what the law says, but how it affects them when they move on. Because once they get to college, yes, they're exited from foster care, but their problems are still there. Okay,
And
now it's just another pool of problems.
yeah.
So it's like, all right, you got them to this point. Now let's bridge that gap and make sure that they have those support systems in place and that they have everything that they need prior to making that decision, just to ensure that academic success and self-sufficiency. But like you said, that self-disclosure.
Yes.
In some way, somehow it has to come from that individual when they feel comfortable and they're willing to, or have someone who can advocate and be their voice. And in your bio, you did state that you prioritize advocating for a stronger support system. So, and we understand the significance of having someone to advocate for you when you don't have anyone else. And it indeed requires a community effort in your life, whether it's now or then. Have you had someone in your life or a community effort as a source of support or motivation for you?
So yes, I think my biggest source of motivation has been two people. One was my social worker at my last placement. I think she believed in me more than I believed in myself, because when she mentioned college to me, I was in shock because I didn't think that anyone else thought that I was smart enough to go to college and that they were willing to invest money into me so that I could go to college. And so I think that was also a me thing, because maybe I didn't have the confidence that I needed. And when you live whatever a traditional life is, you have people that can speak positivity and encouragement into you. But when you don't have that, where does it come from? And so especially as I was growing up, I moved around so much, I felt like disposable at every turn. Like, oh, a year contract, now I have to move to another place. So that was always something that was hard for me. So when she mentioned college and filling out my financial aid, it made me feel important. And it made me feel like people cared about what happened to me. So I, again, give credit to her for even just getting that started for me because I had no idea what the process was. Now I know it like the back of my hand. And so everything, life is so full circle because now I help other people get into college and I educate them on entrance counseling and the master promissory note, like everything, the difference between subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And so because she helped me, I was able to help other people. And I give her so much credit and I hope she's doing well. And then also my dad, my father.
Mm.
My father came to the US from Cuba in the 80s and he really did the best that he could. And one thing that I know now, even though I've been through so much at such a young age, is that our parents also have a history and they have things that have happened to them. And despite that, and even in the Hispanic community and Latinx community, our parents want better for us than they had. And my dad would always encourage me to go to college. He may not have understood how hard it would be for me to go to college, but he wanted me to go. He was like, look, I don't know, but go. And had always been a daddy's girl and I wanted to make him proud. I wanted to show him that even though we had gone through what we had gone through, that I was willing to make my life better. And so even through the turmoil that he had gone through in his life, and I don't even know how, I mean, I can imagine how he felt when his children were taken away. He never missed a visit. He was always very present in our lives. I wanted to make him proud and I accomplished that. He came to my graduation and we took some really beautiful pictures and it was something that made me really emotional because he was able to witness me become a doctor, like the first doctor in our family.
That's amazing.
And it just felt so good. So I give him credit for a lot as well. That has been, those are to my two motivators. And then while I was in college, I also had a mentor that was really pivotal in just creating again that encouragement, the positive reinforcement, because I at some points during my journey was a mess. My dissertation chair, she was also very supportive. And so I found my people. It's not always easy for me to find my people because of my history. It's harder for me to trust people, but I do have a small but mighty support system that I really truly adore and give credit for the young lady that I am today.
That's great. And you are a definition of why it's very important to have such a strong support system
Mhm.
behind you. Now, I understand you speak of trauma and you speak of being angry and trusting people, which I'm sure that still is hard. And I think, once you're an adult, it just goes away. You're no longer traumatized. You shouldn't be angry anymore about your past. But we obviously still see students who are struggling with this and they're struggling with that trauma and they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to release it or channel it. No, so do you mind sharing like what helped you get through those emotional challenges? What was it? Did you find music to be an outlet or sports or writing?
Yeah, so there were two things that helped me through. No, three. One was just letting it out, just crying. Sometimes I don't think that I realized the emotional impact that doing this dissertation would have on me, because I really had to dig into the history of how child welfare came about, the money that is put into removing kids and placing
Mm,
kids. And I was thinking like, well, why don't they just use that money to help parents with resources and keep the family intact? But still chapter one is due and still chapter two is due. It's like you have to be out of your emotions. In the midst of all of that, I lost my mom, my biological mom in January of this year. And so I dealt with that.
I'm sorry
And
to hear that.
thank you, Liz. I dealt with that. And you just have to find ways to calm your heart, because I think that it's easier said than done. But some of the things that I did was I just cried. I listened to music. I like to listen to Tamala Man Radio on Pandora, because it has a lot of inspirational music about dealing with hard things, but then also having the faith to believe that you can get through them. So that carried me through a lot. And in my last placement, we did music therapy. And that's where I learned to use music for something else than just like playing a song, like to really just depict the lyrics and find meaning in them for myself. And so I love that station. And I also like walking. I do nature walks, and I find that those endorphins help me. They distract me and then they make me feel happier. Even if it's just a mask, it works. So those are the things that have helped me. And I did start therapy, but I had to put that on pause to care for my father. But that is also something that I will be revisiting, because I think as long as you are alive, you need help to process certain things, because life is hard.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
and anyone that can say, no, I'm perfectly fine all the time
Mm-mm.
may not be telling the truth. And one thing I'm always going to do is be real and say that sometimes I'm just not okay.
And that's okay. It's okay not to be okay.
Yep. Like
And
what I
especially in
preach.
our line of work and sharing the personal experience as well, you have to train yourself to, obviously you want to put your heart and soul into it, but then to what extent? Because you also have to protect yourself and your own trauma. And so self-care is very important. So for you to be doing therapy, that's commendable, because, not a lot of people can do that or even admit that they
Right.
need it.
Mm-hmm. And there's that stigma again. I think
Oh,
the
absolutely.
stigma of mental health, the stigma of being in foster care, I often wonder, where does that come from? And where was the message lost that if you received help to be better, that something was wrong with you? It's
Right.
such a false message. And it's sad because you see suicide rates rising because people are not getting the help that they need proactively to avoid those things, and or resorting to other things that are harmful to them. And so I am a big advocate of mental health and self-care. Some people call me the self-care queen. I have very strict boundaries. I know how to say no. And these are all skills that I didn't have before. I would let people do and say whatever they wanted to me because I thought it was the way to be liked. And now I don't have that desire to be liked anymore. I have the desire to have peace. And so whatever I need
Yes.
to accomplish that, whether it's taking a break from social media or just simply saying no or putting my phone on do not disturb, it's important, because if I am not well, I cannot help the people that I have been called to serve. And
Right.
so it's always important for me to take care of myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If not us, then who?
Right.
So I am very curious to hear about this dissertation you keep bringing up. So I know a few months ago you contacted me regarding your research study. So, and I promised to follow up. So here I am. So tell us, tell us the title, why you chose the topic. Well, obviously we know now, we're going to know now why she chose the topic, but go right ahead.
Okay, so the title of my dissertation is Dropping Out is Not an Option, It's Do or Die, a qualitative study on the undergraduate college journeys of students with lived in experience in foster care. And so again, I chose that topic because I needed people to know what students transitioning out of foster care and almost immediately going into college. So they turn 18, graduate high school, and go into college. And so these feelings, the trauma, the transitions, everything is pretty new. And the way I came up with my title is I had a participant who said something so profound to me, but it was also a theme that emerged many times with my participants. The part about dropping out is not an option, it's do or die. And that came from the fact that students in foster care actually, not only did they want to go to college to become educated and to create a better life for themselves, but also because they needed a place to live. And so when you had mentioned what your program does in helping homeless youth, it really coincides with the experiences of students in foster care, because a lot of times they don't have the support system that they need in their biological families, or maybe even the foster care home that they came from, to live. And so that would include being in college and coming home for break, something that I think students take for granted if it's something that you don't ever have to think about. So winter break, summer break. And so I think now higher education has, in recent years, has realized that students with experience in foster care need more instrumental support than other students. So housing, food, textbook support. And so I think that was so powerful that, yes, I'm coming here for college, but really I need somewhere to live. And if that's not something that's so eye-opening that a person would decide to come to college mainly for housing, we have a problem. And so that's where that title came from. And it was, like I said, it was something that emerged frequently with the other participants as well.
Right. I want to go to college now, what? But I think it was you, right, that told me the Field Center has that college programming guide with the
Yeah.
list of the colleges and all the services that they're offering for students in foster care.
Yes,
Which,
and which is amazing. And it what it does is it provides a guide for maybe social workers and caseworkers that are working with students transitioning out of high school to identify to proactively and purposefully identify post-secondary education institutions that are committed to supporting foster youth. I think that was something that was needed, but also now that they're becoming more and more popular, I think that there needs to be more funding and more support and more awareness about these programs so that students feel that they belong. And that was, again, another theme of belonging, in a sense that I am doing the right thing and I belong here, was something else that came from my research.
you said you wanted people to know. So what, and that was obviously your hope to achieve increasing awareness and promoting the education for these students. Did it reach? Were your goals reached?
So not as much as I want to yet. So I graduated in May, but I wanted to take a break after I graduated to just take it all in, to process this hard thing that I had done. We currently have a program at our institution to support foster youth, our students transitioning out of foster care. But even the participants that I interviewed from there also talked about continuing struggles that they had. So yes, the programs exist, but how can we make it better? How can we hear and listen to what students are still experiencing despite having these support systems, and how can we strengthen them? My next step is to sit down with the directors, associate directors of these programs to talk about how we can partner in making the program even better and making it so that students have access to a constant support, be even some groups that they can form to talk about not personal things, but have a support group where they're able to talk about things that are important to them or that are bothering them. Because one thing that the research showed is that they would rather keep things to themselves than to talk about it. But we know that with doing that, it's harmful. Because you're not able to deal with that and take a five courses in college and also focus on your personal life. And so one of my participants really struggled with her mental health, which then caused her GPA to go down, which now is causing her to be at risk for dismissal, which will mess up her housing and will lead her back maybe into a homeless shelter. So it's almost like a domino effect, where if you are proactive about it, addressing issues, getting them the support that they need, they can then say, I can focus on my school because I have these resources. So I haven't done what I've wanted to do yet, but I think it's a process that's ongoing and that will never stop.
Absolutely.
I have made it my business to reach out to agencies that I know work with students who have been in care, so that I can tell my story, so that they can feel inspired, and that if they decide one day that they want to come to Westchester, that they know I exist and that they can lean on me for support.
You're creating a ripple.
Yep.
Which creates
Exactly.
another ripple.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So you were talking about some common themes there. Do you have any other ones that you
Yes.
found?
So the housing was a theme. Really keeping things to themselves instead of telling people about it, having
And
issues with, oh, go
now
ahead.
with telling them about, like, having them open up How do you encourage some students? Like, do you work with them one-on-one that you try to encourage them to self-disclose?
I don't have the privilege of working with this population. There's a set of employees that are responsible for supporting this group of students. So I have not had the privilege of working with them. Do I work with them and don't know that they're in foster care? Of course. But are they going to just tell me that they were in foster care? No, because of the shame and stigma. And so it was so, I think again, it's full circle when you experience things. Like I had a participant who actually was really near it, like within my circle, and I didn't know because they don't go, just like I didn't go around telling people I was in foster care. And I don't really know what the solution is so that students come into Westchester or come into any post-secondary education and disclose that they were in foster care. One of the things that I would like to see is that this question is added to the admissions applications, and then the student can decide from there if they want to disclose or not. But what if there is a student who's like, yeah, I'm going to tell this to the admissions application, but I don't need to go around parading that I was in foster care, but at least they know that the student exists, and then they can do targeted communications. Hey, we have this program. This is what it can offer, and this is how it can help you, but allow them to make that decision themselves. And we do a lot of work around first generation students, and we ask first generation students if they are first generation students. So we don't have a problem with that. And I think what we do for first gen students are great, but a lot of these students that are coming from the foster care system into higher education have intersecting identities. So they might be first gen, they might be a Black student or a diverse student with a lot of varying needs. So the more that we can be proactive and prepare for their arrival to campus, the better. I think it's to be reactive to, oh, they have this issue and now, but their GPA is a 1.2. I think that's a problem on our end and society
Right.
and post-secondary education, that we wait until there's a problem to address it.
We need to provide more outreach, and it starts with the youth, training them on what's out there and the services that are available to them, and talk to everybody in the room, not just
Right.
specific populations, but all the senior classes in high school, because there could be one student in that class that is in foster care,
Right.
but no one knows, and he's not going to say anything, but now he knows the information. So if he wants
Exactly.
to go to college, he knows what he needs to do now because that information has been disclosed to him without him having to say, I'm a foster kid. And I
Right.
also think the stigma with homelessness and foster care is one thing that's causing an issue for students to self-disclose,
Yes.
because right away it's like you're looked down upon. I get it. Like there is, like, I'm not saying everyone does it, but it's still, that lack of awareness is still there, believe it or
Yeah.
not. And it's like it only gets better with us, and starting young, starting with, the younger students so that they can learn how to advocate for themselves or someone else, and providing that education and not wait until they're in your office.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely get it's very important.
And then how powerful it is to know that there's someone who has reached a level of success that you're aiming for, that has been through the same thing that you have been through. And not to
Mm-hmm.
say that people who have not experienced foster care cannot help this population. That is not at all what I'm saying. But no one knows what it's like to be in foster care unless you've been in foster care. So some people may say, well, you know, it was probably a better situation for you. Not
You don't know
necessarily.
that. Exactly.
Not necessarily.
Were you
You
there?
don't know that. You don't know the things that happen when you're
Mm,
in care.
right.
And so I'm also big on empathy and being able to say, I may not know how that feels, but I can almost imagine how that may make you feel. And what do you need me to do to help you and to support you? the way you want to be supported and helped. And I think that's another thing, is giving students the freedom to get the help that they need the way that they need it and nothing else. Like, we don't need to be intrusive. We don't need to call students out because of their experiences. But we need to be supportive and be available when they do need us. And so the barriers were definitely it was the biggest area in which I struggled, because I can say for a lot of them, I could relate 100%. So it was like the mental health, the low social capital. And for those that may not know what social capital is, it's basically your informal support network. So mom, dad, stepdad, stepmom, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, anybody that if you needed something at the drop of a dime, you can say, hey, I don't have $50 for a textbook. Could you send it to me? Or I am having an emotional breakdown because I have a test and I think I'm going to fail it. When you don't have that, it's the difference between being successful and not, and being able to come out on the other end. And sometimes I look back, Liz, and I'm like, how did I do this? How did I do this? Because I didn't have those people that in my informal circle that could help me in the ways that I needed. I really muddled through a lot of stuff by myself. And it was not the healthiest thing, but it was the only thing I could do. I had no other option. But what about those students who may not be able to do that, who struggle with mental health, who need to work a full-time job to make sure that they can pay their living expenses? So that takes away from their ability to focus on schoolwork. So I was so grateful for my last placement because I didn't have to worry about working. They would send me money. And now that I think of it in 2023, I'm like, I really thought this was a lot of money, but I didn't have any.
Nope, not now.
I was really surviving off of it. But
ramen noodles.
Girl, how were you surviving? And I survived. So I did work a job on campus just to have extra money, but I didn't need to. And I was very fortunate in that way, but other students aren't. I had a student in my study who worked full time. And so when she would go to class, and it was overnight, and when she would go to class in the morning, she would be asleep. And so the professor would get on her about sleeping, as he or she probably should have, but then also pulling the student aside to say, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Because I think that there's a lot of behavioral things that students do that we don't necessarily pick up on. But if we give them the opportunity to have a discussion in a safe place, and if you approach it the right way, students will tell you what's going on with them, and they provide you the opportunity to help them. And if you can't help them, you can direct them to someone who can. So these are like everyday experiences that our students are dealing with. And I just feel so empowered, Liz, to just be a voice as someone who has been there and can say, I did it, and so can you.
Yes. And that's what we aim for.
Yep.
And, Evelyn, your work is truly remarkable. Can I just say that? And you should feel very proud of yourself.
Thank you.
And
I'm
I know,
so proud of you too. I always tell you that. I'm just
thank you. Thank you. But I know, being that I have my own fair share of personal experience too, after a while, you can hear only so many times, oh, you're so strong and resilient and you should be proud of yourself. You did it on your own. Not a lot of people could do what you did, and you beat the odds. But you know what? At the end of the day, we really should be proud of ourselves, because it did take some strength and a lot of resilience. And when you think about the challenges, so I mean, it's hard even with the support system. So imagine you and me without one. It's even tougher. So I think people say, oh, you were so strong. And after a while, you're like, okay, yeah, but being strong is tiring. And I'm tired of being strong. Sometimes I just want to throw in the towel and say, can someone else just do? But you know what? No, we are strong. We are resilient. We should feel proud. Your work is remarkable. I just look forward to everything that you're going to be doing, because I know you're not finished.
I'm not.
I know Dr. Anderson just started, and it takes someone with your level of understanding to make a difference in the lives of these students. It truly does. So I appreciate your hard work, and I wish you nothing but the best in your future endeavors. But on that note, what's next for you?
What's next for me is I'm going to be spreading the word. I want to really hone in on my leadership skills, maybe even some motivational speaking. I don't know. I'm a
Yes,
super introvert, but I think I have a story to tell that
you
might help
do.
someone else. So that might be something that I look into.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, you let me know if you have any speaking engagements coming up because you definitely have a story and you're very gravitating. So I would love to hear you. But Evelyn, again, thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful conversation with me. It was great
You're
having
so
you.
welcome.
And we aim to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. And it's an achievement that we can all be proud of. So we invite you to join us again next month for another episode of Let's Have a Conversation. Have a great day, everyone.